smart contract layer. So our mission in general is to accelerate the proliferation of dApps by providing them with the best toolchain and infra, and also enable the Web3 teams to be more transparent to their communities. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I guess in terms of I can give a little bit more history of the team. So Sentio is founded by a group of serial entrepreneurs and veteran engineers from companies like Google, LinkedIn, Elastic, which is the company behind the open source project Elasticsearch, and also TikTok. And the team has pretty extensive experience in observability, large scale data infra, and we've been very enthusiastic about crypto for a long time. Like for example, me personally have been following Ethereum since the initial ICO of Ethereum. And so, as the team starts to, witness the success of DeFi and dApps starting in 2020, we also grow, pretty concerned about all the hacks and exploits we see, as well as the fact that, we talk to many Web3 teams, and almost all of them just have to keep reinventing the wheel by, write their own in-house indexers, set up dashboards and alerts, etc. So, we decide to sort of the best way to help the industry is to bring what our expertise is, which is to build observability solutions, and bring that expertise to the Web3 world, and that's how Sentio gets started.
Awesome. Yeah, this is definitely very well needed in crypto. It's actually, for those of you in the audience that are not in the weeds of it, it's actually really difficult to query and use data from the blockchain. Like every blockchain is a little bit different. Aptos as well is a little bit different. How you track interactions, events, addresses, and having a tool like this has been extremely useful for us. To not have to spend a lot of time and resources essentially trying to pull mint, try to pull data for specific queries. So it's awesome to have the something like Sentio to be able to go into and easily pull this data that's already being organized. So yeah, kind of curious to hear your thoughts about what are some of the issues in the blockchain space that you see for actually pulling and using this data, and then how you guys are tackling this to make it easier for folks like us.
Absolutely. So I think you covered at least a few aspects of it, right? So first of all, we live in a multi-chain world today. So the architecture of an API of Ethereum or other EVM compatible chains is very different from the others like Aptos. Um, so just being able to have like a sort of unified experience or API to query data or indexing data from these different ecosystem is very hard for a project team, and we sort of provide that layer. And also the sort of the characteristic of different ecosystems also quite different, right? So even if you consider like two EVM compatible chains like Ethereum mainnet and say Polygon and L2, right? Because their QPS is very different. So like the infrastructure needed to uh, sort of support the different ecosystems is also different. And also just in general, as you mentioned, um, you can imagine like the blockchain stores on-chain activity in a very um, encoded and very compressed way, right? Because that's the only way that they can put everything onto the blockchain. But to actually use that data, you have to sort of decode and decompress those data, and it's not easy to provide to sort of host and maintain an infrastructure like that, and it's especially not necessary for every Web3 team to do that in house, right? To, as I said, reinvent the wheel. instead of spending time focus on the main application, the DeFi, the staking service you're providing. So so that's another, and it's also very hard, as I said, to make it. Even if you can build it, it's very hard to make it stable and usable for a long time and scalable. So like we also provide that aspect to the for Web3 teams.
Yeah, definitely. Scaling scaling is definitely an issue when you need such specialized skills for stuff like this. So it's definitely been extremely useful for us as we, for example, visualize some of the statistics on Liquidswap. So for those of you that use Liquidswap, if you go on the stats page, a lot of those are coming from Sentio, and really grateful to have their API be able to pull that relatively easily and add in new features as we add in more and more stats. Want to hear what some of the other use cases you're seeing on Aptos and maybe other L1s for teams that are using this, and potentially even for some people in the audience that might have an idea of creating like a data product. I think there's a huge opportunity, at least that I've seen, for doing honestly like useful stuff that people want to see on Aptos being visualized. So potentially could also be an opportunity. So yeah, what are some of the most common use cases you're seeing for your product right now?
Yeah, I think given the broadness of the product, like and how sort of like because we really provide this generic layer of the indexing and also pretty powerful visualization and alerting on top of it. So really, like different DApp project can use us in a very different way. So obviously for Pontem, as you said, we're powering the stats page. So that means you can gain really detailed information into every single pool you have, right? And things like the price impact if you make $100 trade in one direction, like it can be as detailed as that. And also, for example, there are like some lending protocols that are using our service to build this borrower dashboard for their borrowers, basically to show what when is your next payment due, what's your interest accumulated, things like that, and so that dashboard gives the borrowers the right information for them to make the payment on time, so they don't accrue any punishment. Also gives the the, the lenders a lot of um, information and confidence about who am I lending this to, what's the history of this borrower, um, and things like that. And also, like we're used in some NFT marketplace where they can track the trading volume of their NFTs, the floor price, the floor price changes, and also some for some GameFi projects, they can use us to sort of track because for a lot of these GameFi projects, they actually generated they originally generated the game. Basically the game is run in a very centralized environment, right? They run on their server, but the token that is generated through playing the game is eventually will be transferred from their centralized server to be on-chain token, and they need a tool to compare to make sure that their sort of this minting process is correct. So there are different use cases. Like as long as you have a smart contract deployed there, you will and your smart contracts are generating data, generating events. There is a way you can use into it.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. I mean, it's like a very malleable tool for people to be able to use all these data. Yeah, would love to see more of these being applied to Aptos, as yeah, the Ethereum ecosystem, for example, is rich with all these data tools and applications. One another example or use case that we used was for marking the whitelist for recent NFT drops that we did. So how do we look at, for example, Liquidswap users that transacted within the last 30 days? That was a relatively easy pool, and thank you for the Sentio team for doing that. But that helped also, for example, recently help us mark a whitelist spot. And yeah, we'd love to see how this continues developing and seeing more of these applications come to market on Aptos.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah, I guess from from that perspective, what do you want to see build? Like, is there anything that in particular you're excited about, a use case that you're excited about that hasn't been attempted yet, and potentially someone here could do it?
For sure, yeah. I think for us, a very immediately use case is like we want to see a crypto based or crypto native um, billing and payment system for a subscription service in Web3. And that, if you think about, how a SaaS service like a traditional charge people in the Web2 world, right? Like, for example, you can use Stripe and then you can hook it up with your application and just bill the user automatically, right? That every month the user will receive a bill and they can choose different payment method, whether it's credit card or ACH, things like that, or wiring. In the Web3 world, we there is not, we haven't seen an application that makes that process very easy. Where we want to say, similarly, you can every month you get a bill and then either you can pre-approve some kind of smart contract and that contract will just deduct some USDC, for example, payment from your wallet automatically, or there's a way that can notify that there's a way for you to easily make that payment. Like we haven't seen that very well integrated with the app yet, and we're looking forward to innovation in that space.
Yeah, that would certainly be useful, and if it can connect us like a whole accounting system too, like there can be
Yep.
tracking for businesses or individuals. That sounds like that would be huge. Um, yeah, it's pretty interesting. I think that's definitely one of the best use cases for crypto so far, payments and remittances. So specifically with stablecoins, I think low key a lot of people don't realize how many people actually get paid in stablecoins in crypto.
Yeah, because to be honest, I believe we in the crypto world we have a more like a superior like underlying infrastructure, right, compared to the Swift system or ACH between the banks. Like obviously, we all know blockchain is a much better uh, solution, like under the hood. But we just need that sort of packaging and to make it very easy to use. On top of that, I think we're lacking a dApp that makes it very easy to use.
Yeah, I hope that's definitely where we're going. I saw someone make the analogy that essentially where all everyone in crypto is just building for a bunch of other nerds in crypto, so we don't really try that hard on the user experiences. One good example of that was, for example, Curve, where Curve recently changed their UI, but for
Yeah,
all of those that
I was,
remember,
yeah, I
uh,
was gonna talk about their UI as well. That UI was scary for non-technical people.
yeah, exactly. You go in there and there's so many numbers, there's so many words you've never heard before. Everything is like tiny, not consumable at all, and it was like stepping back in time to like 1995. Like they're really leaned into that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's a style that is, you will get a smile for like these hackers and old time programmers, but yeah, for like new users, it's quite intimidating, and that's on top of already intimidating concept of the whole DeFi concept. So yeah, definitely something that can be improved.
Yeah, exactly. Like if I'm an entirely new user, like if I'm my grandma and my grandson tells me to go, trade this USDC for USDT or DAI or whatever, which is a dollar, so they can send me some Christmas money. And then they go into Curve, they're gonna be so lost and scared. Like I can't even imagine. Um, but all of that should hopefully be able to be abstracted away. To your point, like we just need better tooling to bundle all this stuff together because the underlying rails are there. It should be cheaper to send payments through crypto than it is through a wire or traditional ACH. There's definitely some hurdles, but overall this tech definitely works relatively better for doing cross-border payments, remittances, stuff like that. And if we can get through the terrible UX, which part of it is like design work and front end work. But a lot of it is kind of like what you guys are doing, just making sure that the data that's needed is easily accessible. That, like, for example, if you're working with multiple chains, that the application in the background can query all that, in a time efficient way, and do the logic that it needs to do. So, um, do you feel like there's still a lot of steps need to be done for applications to have the ability to look a lot more like Web 2? Like, given that you're in the infrastructure, kind of curious to hear your thoughts on whether the infrastructure is there, or it's just starting to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, as I said, that's what originally motivates us to enter the space, the Web3 space, because a lot of the problems we see in the Web3 world has already been solved in the Web2 world. Those are not, uh, for example, a lot of the re-entry attack we see in the smart contracts, like re-entry attack has been a very well studied topic in the Web2 world, right? So we should be able to avoid that. But because it's such a nascent industry, people will just sort of make the mistakes they made in old industries again. And similar to observability space, which is where we working on. In the Web2 world, we have a lot of successful product that is securing and monitoring the really life essential products you're using every day, right? Think, Twitter or Google or other things. And we already know how to secure like a very large scale um, application that has very high QPS and all that. Um, and we just have to bring a lot of that experience, a lot of that uh, design methodology and product idea, uh, and bring those philosophies basically to the Web3 world. Um, in specifically in observability, for example, this may get a little bit esoteric, but for example, it's important to let different aspects of your observable observables of a system work together, whether it's metrics or logs or uh, you know uh, another traces, and debuggers to work together to work as a all-in-one product suite for observability solution, and we haven't seen that in Web3 space at all, and that's what we are here to build.
Yeah, it really seems like this trend of maybe more traditional tech builders coming onto Web3 is kind of like the edge of new, like maybe the new generation, we can call it that, the new generation of people building are coming from traditional tech, and they're putting to use, they're essentially saying like, hey, all the stuff that we used to have doesn't exist here yet. Let's build it so we can build what we previously, were maintaining. Like maybe the first few generations, were more um, maybe like a younger, more less risk averse group of people that came into crypto and built a lot of the first primitives and a lot of what's existing now. But now we're starting to professionalize this industry a little bit more as we bring in, the people that have maintained the traditional tech infrastructure. It's like Web 2 is all the people that were maintaining Web 2 are now joining Web 3 and making Web 3 as stable and as reliable and have as much infrastructure as Web 2. So it's pretty cool to see happen. Yeah, kind of curious to hear your thoughts on there. See whether you have fellow peers also, not just from your team, but others that you're seeing also making this transition and thinking about Web 3 in this way.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to actually add one thing to your previous point is our observation is the Web3 world actually has even higher stake to make sure it's secure, right? Obviously, because compared to a Web2 system, for example, if um, if a blog or a site is down, usually the service is unavailable for a few hours or a few days. Of course they lose like ads revenue or GMV, but usually like the user related assets or credits or balances are usually pretty safe in that space. But in Web3 world, right, if there's like an attack or a hack or exploit, if there's a bug in your system, it's not just like the services are available for a few hours for the users, right? Because most likely your smart contracts interact with the user assets directly, and that will, uh, you know, make your user lose money basically almost all the time. Um, so that's why we think we should bring the Web3 industry up to speed as soon as possible. And go back to your question about migration from Web2 and Web3 world. Yeah, definitely we have, just from my personal experience, personal network, a lot of people are, move from the traditional, like I worked in Silicon Valley for more than 10 years, and a lot of people I know are moving towards the Web3 industry, definitely. Maybe not uh, to be the most Web3 native team at the very beginning. Like for example, a lot of my friends moved from, say, Google to, or Facebook to uh, Coinbase, or to Circle as their first step, but they sort of then get a little bit more experience in to the crypto world, and then they move on to more like Web3 native teams. That's definitely a trend that I've been observing.
Yeah, that's definitely that's definitely a transition that I've seen as well. People definitely feel more comfortable going into like a centralized finance company like a Coinbase, and where it does operate, a lot of the systems and software operates a lot in a lot similar ways than the products that they're used to. And then coming over to crypto, it's like a different paradigm shift and how you think about, yeah, like you're saying, security and some of the ways that we architect and build these products. Um, it's a lot of the same things, but also very very different. And hopefully we continue to see this trend. The thing that's going to keep growing this ecosystem is the talent coming in and continuing to build, and having the infrastructure, the scaffolding to continue building. Um, so yeah, it would definitely be awesome to continue this trend, and I think we'll definitely continue to see it. And the high throughput chains like Aptos, I think, are also attracting people that previously were maybe put off by the inability to build something that was like high performance, low cost, and potentially we'll see a lot more applications being built on the newer infrastructure. Um, yeah, I think it'll be interesting to follow this trend. Maybe there's some way to track on LinkedIn or something, the people that are moving over from Web 2 over to Web 3. You're definitely right in the transition as some of these kind of like intermediary CeFi companies, and hopefully more DeFi and other more crypto native products continue adopting the mind share of this, and we build stuff that's truly decentralized.
Absolutely, yeah. That's absolutely the trend I am observing just personally. Yeah, will be very interesting to see if there's like some kind of report, yeah, in the future, that get data from LinkedIn or other sources to sort of quantify the this migration from Web 2 to Web 3 world.
Nice. Yeah, kind of to pivot the conversation a little bit from the business side. Kind of curious to hear about your own personal your own personal journey getting to crypto. So I know you mentioned a lot of your team members, and you're early on in crypto and Ethereum. It sounds like you're an OG, I guess, by standards. So kind of curious to hear how you got turned on and what your journey has been to get here.
Oh, I definitely wouldn't call myself an OG. I've been, I've been, so like I come from engineering, sort of software engineering background. Did my both my studies in undergrad and grad in computer engineering. So obviously very into the whole cryptography, and other related topic. Just computer systems early on, and I've been following like the news of Bitcoin since 2013, I think. But I never, I have to admit, I didn't invest anything in crypto at the time. But I think what really gets me excited is Ethereum when it's first launched, and I think that the whole idea of uh, smart contracts and basically a programmable blockchain application is very very exciting to me. I didn't actually participate in the ICO at the very beginning either, but I was following the project very closely, and then I sort of start to sort of just buying Ethereum and Bitcoin around I'll say 2016. and went into the uh, 2017 craze, like the ICO craze, and then of course, I did invest in some good projects, but most of them uh, didn't work out very well. But I think it's like the 2017 cycle. I think it's very similar to uh, the 2000 internet bubble, where you see a lot of idea is actually correct, right? And the direction is correct, but like just people are just getting overly enthusiastic, given the reality. But the 2020 cycle, like the DeFi summer, feels very different for us. As I mentioned, like that's the first time we actually see people are using the apps, right? Like if you compare that to the 2017 cycle, even during the ICOs of these projects, what's funny is like these when they're collecting Ethereum from you, they didn't even write a smart contract at the time, right? They usually just give you an address and you just send them an address, right? They like the dApps themselves don't use a smart contract to collect funds for their dApps, which is funny. But really, like starting 2020, we start to see, like I think DeFi is obviously the first sort of viral application, killer application, I'll say. And then we start to see people even like uh, start to interact with dApps and smart contracts using their wallets, MetaMask or others, and even like the what I consider the non-tech savvy people start to get into the details of for example using Etherscan to look at a transaction, to look at how it interacts with smart contracts and all that, and that's when we as a team feel, oh, like the dApp age is really here. And then, as I said, we at the same time, it also brings new problem, right? Like we see a lot of hacks and exploits, and even some of our friends become victims of such. And also, we talk to a lot of these Web3 teams, and coming from our background, we ask a lot about how to build, how do you observe your smart contracts, how do you monitor them, how do you make sure they're running smoothly, and this is especially important for smart contracts because especially at the early stage, it's impossible to actually pause and upgrade your smart contracts at the very beginning. So like if something went wrong, then it went really wrong, right? So but even given that, they were just like, yeah, since there's nothing we can do, then we don't do much monitoring. We just let it run. We just code is law and all that. But we always feel like that shouldn't be the excuse to say, oh, because code is law, that means we don't have to monitor them correctly. So yes, I think that's where sort of our idea of starting Centio really stems from. So that's how me and a few other co-founders in the company decided to start Centio. So that's sort of my crypto journey.
Yeah, it's you're totally right. It's super interesting, the cycles that this went through, and how different this last one has been. It seems like, yeah, we're probably just seeing the ecosystem mature firsthand, right? Like you were saying, in 2017, these projects were launching with essentially no contracts or no product built, just a white paper and send ETH here. And there's like hundreds of millions of dollars for individual projects just racing that way, and that was pretty crazy. And that was, I mean, that was a whole cycle, right? We When Bitcoin first went up to like $20,000, which it's arguably at around today. And that was definitely overhyped. Not a lot of maybe substance there. And there was definitely a few teams that made it through. So I think Gnosis is one example of a team that was very early on and built through some of this. And to your point, then DeFi summer came around, and apps like, yeah, Compound, for example, Aave, others that were essentially launching with already made products, started to gain traction. And yeah, that first found product market fit. I think the financial applications of this is definitely one where we'll see continued adoption and growth of the product market fit, and that really was like more mature, right? The industry was like, okay, we're not just going to throw money at everything. We're going to make sure that there's like real products being built. There's real teams building the stuff that have the ability to build these products if we give them the funds to do so. And that was what, like 2020. And I think there's still like another round of hype, and this recent bull run seems to have been led by a lot of maybe credit extension, so maybe like a lot of speculation, but the value that's being built, the teams that are getting funded and building real products is there now. There's definitely a lot better due diligence from the investors into these teams, so these teams are actually uh, you know doing having planning for a roadmap that they can actually build over a period of time, and these things are being slowly but surely being built, and it definitely takes time to do so. So um, yeah, that's kind of crazy to think about, that 2020 was not that long ago, and that was like when we started to get some of the real first applications being built, and it's only 2022 or 2023, so it's really only been like 3 years since the application layer, I guess, somewhat started, and now we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in general, like everything is just faster in the Web3 world, right? Crypto world. So like the cycles will be much faster as well. Uh, if you compare it to the again, if we go back to the internet bubble in 2000, as you said, a lot of good companies are born at in like during the burst of that bubble. Like if you look at Google and Amazon, right? They're born around that time, and then 5-10 years later, they become the biggest companies in the world. So I think the cycles are just like shorter in this crypto world. So like yeah, it, it doesn't sound very long. It's just 2 years ago, but yeah, it definitely feels very long, and a lot of happened, and a lot of innovation happened, and unfortunately, a lot of like incidents and ups and downs happen as well. But I think we will have a very bright future.
Yeah, it's like shorter, more exaggerated, but maybe also like has a little bit more of the natural selection. Whereas, because maybe in the internet bubble, we had the stock market, which was being overvalued, and there was some inherent trust in people putting money into stocks that they're real companies, etc. But here, it grew so quickly, and it deflated so quickly as well, and it was probably just because how um, I guess fluid the money movement is. And maybe it didn't get as big as the internet bubble. Maybe eventually it might, right? But the value of movement, just the movement of value, just moves so quickly, and without any friction, that these bubbles can exist and then pop, and exist and pop really quickly. And if you're actually building value, like if your product is actually contributing something that's valuable to people, like trading two assets, providing a credit market, a money market, then people will stick around, continue using, and that upward trajectory will go. And yeah, maybe another reason that this stuff is being built so fast is that you don't really, for an application, the infrastructure is somewhat like taken care of. So I know we're definitely discussing some of the scaffolding around building that needs to be built. But like if you're a smart contract developer, you can technically build an app without having like DevOps, for example. So any person can go onto Ethereum and write a Solidity contract and build something, and that's also relatively powerful and new, that maybe allows people to build pretty quickly. But yeah, these things, um, we'll go through these cycles, and I think we need these cycles to enable people to catch attention, and start using these products. Hopefully everybody can take care of themselves, and not get too hurt as the cycle draws down. But yeah, I think we'll probably continue seeing these cycles until just kind of like persistently get through mainstream adoption. Um, Kind of curious to hear what you think the next set of trends, or what other products after DeFi you'll see get adopted in crypto, and maybe some of the barriers that exist today for it.
Yeah, it's obviously very hard to make prediction like that. But I think, again, as I said, I think just to sort of closing the gap of between the Web 2 and Web 3 world will be a pretty big theme. Like I obviously talk about the SaaS payment solutions, but I think very similarly to like personal payment, right? You know, the the current experience is it's not. I think it's pretty good for tech savvy people, but like um, for non-tech savvy people, it's still like there's still a gap in terms of like you have to take care of your private key. If you lose it, you lose everything. Things like that. So I still know a lot of quote unquote crypto users are still keep their funds only on centralized exchange, right? Because they feel account and password is more secure than others. I think sort of applying sort of ChatGPT and AI to the crypto world will be a pretty interesting trend as well, just in terms of the whole GameFi and it's a GameFi space where and metaverse concept, right? Where now all of a sudden you can very cheaply generate conversational conversational content or other uh, video content very easily. Sort of to build that metaverse is very will be like the entry barrier to build a very interesting metaverse all of a sudden becomes much more easily. So I think that's the two sort of direction I'm excited about. I think we can build a lot of relative low hanging fruit. We can build a lot of interesting applications in. Um, Even in terms of like NFT, I think generative AI will help NFT to sort of find a lot of new applications as well. But I think like there are a lot of innovation can be done in the DeFi space as well. Just in terms of instead of powering only on-chain activity, can we extend? I think a few projects are already making efforts in that direction, including some of them are working with us. But like, how do you empower sort of real world a little bit more, right? Like provide finance, for example, based on uh, to just providing sort of microfinance for like small businesses, right? Like how do you connect and also like credit based borrowing, for example, right? Like how do you connect the credit history of the person and then allow people to fund that person based on their credit history and so they can do things in real world. So I think that's all really interesting um, directions for me.
Yeah, I think all those are definitely prospects for what's going to be the next trend. Curious to hear your thoughts on maybe like the challenges to some of that. So, for example, earlier you were mentioning the games needing to sync like their local servers with the blockchain. So yeah, kind of curious to hear more details on that. Like, what are is the are we introducing new challenges, for example, on like having like a trust in this game, and is that even a problem, or is there a way to maybe also um, decentralize that part a little bit? But yeah, kind of curious to hear some of the firsthand challenges that some of these use cases are getting adopted and that you're also helping to solve.
Yeah, so yeah, as you said, like today, I think the underlying infrastructure for games is still very limited, right? So, even the even some of the chain that is claimed to be designed for the games scenario, right? Like even for example, I think Solana was originally introduced, also styled as like a chain for gaming. Like they in reality they cannot handle the QPS for average game, which is why a lot of the the games, most of the games actually, the GameFi, the when you're playing with the game, it's actually still in their centralized server. They only sync it to like on-chain active. They only sync the token, for example, to the and to mint them on chain later, right? For example, you say, okay, I want to withdraw the token I generated in the game. they say, okay, give us 3 or 5 days, then they sync it to to change. So I think there's a lot of things can be done on the infrastructure, just in terms of increasing the QPS and other throughput. And also, as I said, like of course, I'm not an expert in this, but just uh, I think another reason why game is hard to run, you need to rely on centralized server to run games is because of uh, this graphics and content, right, which is usually very large, uh, and uh, these are very large, and it's very hard to run a high quality game on a decentralized setting. Whereas, I'm wondering if there's a way we can sort of make ChatGPT to be a more in a decentralized way, right? And then there could be a decentralized network of content generating for games, whether it's the graphic or the as I said, the conversation, and that will eventually even make the games more fun by add more randomness and transparency to the game content, or extensibility to the game content. So I don't have like a very concrete vision or architecture of what that would look like, but I feel that's something the industry can explore.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's probably still going to need to be some level of trust in the game developer to continue developing the game, maintain. Maybe what's open is like the back end primitives, like the NFTs and the tokens, where maybe someone can build their own game around that NFT ecosystem or token, I guess, in a way. And maybe that's the part that stays decentralized. But then the actual implementations of them, until I guess we can get to something maybe like a game running on IPFS or something like that, we will need to maintain trust in some of these um, companies maintaining the servers, and then checkpointing that into the blockchain, like you're saying, maybe at the end of the day or every few moments. And yeah, that's a good point. Maybe a lot of applications will kind of need to work that way, where there's some level of trust, but that trust is only for a short period of time. It doesn't need to be there indefinitely. Like as you're holding, um, more non-custodial. Maybe a good example is like an exchange, right? Like what if an exchange was kind of like self custodial, but then you're still using their systems to trade. So you could do like really high throughput chains, so really high throughput transactions, and all that would be happening, on their servers. But then like you settle, once a day, or every few times a day, and then you keep your funds in a non-custodial wallet when you're not using the high throughput trading or features that happen in a centralized server. So yeah, I think that's a good point. That might be how games also evolve in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cynthia in that sense can help you to provide a very high frequency check on chain. For example, if you sync with your blockchain every say 5 minutes, right? And during that 5 minutes, you can do computation or on a centralized server, but you have to make sure every 5 minutes, for example, you have to report everything to blockchain, and Centio will be able to provide you with that visualization to the community, for example, every 5 minutes. So that makes sure that your operation is correct.
Yeah. Um, things like that are definitely gonna continue to be needed. And yeah, that's I'm kind of curious, and maybe longer conversation about how you also think about, if you become like key part of that infrastructure, you also need to have some form of um, like trust and verifiability for users that what you're going through and then outputting to the blockchain ends up being accurate as well. So maybe also kind of curious to hear your thoughts on that. I know we only have about 13 minutes left, but like as a user, just hypothetically, if I'm using a game and it's using Sentio, like how can I trust that Sentio is outputting the right data? Like what if, for example, I'm playing Call of Duty or something, or Fortnite, and I collected 10 game items, and I swear I collected them, but at the end of the day it only says 9. Like how can you reconcile that if there's like some central server that's doing some of the calculations first?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now, Cintio, like what Cintio is doing is what we call read-only operations of the blockchain, right? So first of all, we don't write to the blockchain at all, right? So we just make the infrastructure to uh, basically read and query data from the blockchain, and also make sure it's real time, it's very fast. So everything that is on our service is ultimately verifiable by the blockchain itself, right? So, for example, if the blockchain says 10, and if our system says 9, then yeah, then that means there's an error in our system. But eventually, that's verifiable is whether it's our problem or issue, or maybe the game server itself is reporting wrong, right? For example, maybe get you get 9 items from the game server, but when they sync it, it's 10, and you actually will be able to in that case catch the error of the game server syncing process. Um, and also, like, we again, like, I think our expertise kicks in when it comes to, okay, now how do you make sure the data reported by your server is inconsistent with what is recorded on the blockchain. I think that's why I think we are the right team to do this, because this is like basically what the team have been doing for a quite a long time, which is to make sure to build basically very reliable, high, real time and large scale data infrastructure, to make sure our system is always in sync with the blockchain itself. And also, just to be clear, at least for what we see observe now, um, the the sort of the data, the throughput of the blockchain itself is relatively small compared to the Web2 world, right? So, like, if you think about in the traditional, like, Web2 application, like, how many for example, user interaction is uh, the user has, for example, for even consider a payment system, right? Like, if you pay someone some money, like, your data infrastructure have to process a lot of queries. Uh, Versus, in the Web3 world, that quantity is actually much smaller. So like, we already know, if we have a source of truth, which is the blockchain, how to reliably sync and index that data without error. And also, like, we did invest a lot in terms of building a solution that handles cases like, for example, blockchain reorganization. For example, on Cintio, even today, if there's a blockchain reorganization happened, there's like an uncle block generated, then we will automatically, after a block, we will just correct that data and go with the longest chain, for example. So so I guess it it's hard to say. It's hard to say. Our system is can be 100% correct all the time, but just um, given the architecture we were able to build, I think, and the blockchain itself being a very reliable, trustworthy source of truth, and we're read only. We have pretty high confidence that most of the time our data is pretty correct, and if, for example, a block reorg happens, we will automatically correct it.
Yeah, that's definitely very much needed. I would say, like, the more that you can then also reliably show that even through moments of stress, like you're saying, through a through a chain reorg, that you've been able to maintain accuracy on the blockchain and kind of like what you're outputting. And I think over time people can trust that. And I guess what I'm envisioning is maybe, like, you're feeding this data, the read data that you're pulling from the blockchain, the game does some logic. There is some issue there. There's happens to be, 9 versus 10. Obviously, the blockchain is kind of like the source of truth because you can't really change the blockchain, or so there might be like um, some arbitration on the game server. So maybe, like, okay, the blockchain said this, even though there's like some small mistake. This is what's going to need to happen to make sure that the accounting is right on these systems before it gets checkpointed again. But then like over time, if people see Sentio as a reliable provider, like if the games themselves see like, okay, it's 99.99% accurate, 99% of the time. So in that regard, as that continues to be trusted, then we can start to trust these games and not have these like awkward arbitration scenarios where like the blockchain reads 9, the game reads 10, and you're like, oh crap, I'm losing one of my coins or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, we just kind of thought through that. That was pretty like an interesting use case. I think a lot of games are probably definitely thinking about that. Even like the most popular one right now is this Dookie Dash game from Bored Ape Yap Club. So that's a game that I'm not entirely sure if it's on Ethereum. What the I guess base. I think so. I would imagine if people are using the sewer pass and that's on Ethereum, but um, people log in and they play this game, and what happens then? Like, is there? I guess I don't think there's any sort of checkpoint. I don't think any data gets written to the blockchain in that regard, but there seems to be some like in the future, I imagine, and maybe the central line is actually like a better example, where like if you're doing stuff in the game and you need to kind of trust that for a little bit before it gets put back into the blockchain, you can collect your Decentraland or Sandbox coins back. But these, I think something else to think about is, how if we're using these things, we still need some level of trust. Like, for example, I saw a Twitter thread of someone that was able to kind of like hack the game itself. So not hack the blockchain, right, but hack the actual game in a way that they were able to get through the obstacles, without actually playing the game. So that could potentially be like another attack vector to look out for. But these are growing pains, and it's a new paradigm of how we think about these things. And we need to think through more solutions to some of these edge cases that appear. But slowly but surely, we're making progress in this direction. It seems like.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why you know, adopting a system like Sentio is very important for for these games, especially when they're in this stage. Because as you said, it's because you have that sort of barrier from like your centralized server to the blockchain, and you kind of have to constantly sync from your server to blockchain. You really have to make sure that that process is correct, and having Sentio to monitor. For example, today I'm gonna mint 1,000 coins for 10 different users, and being able to monitor that process and compare nodes to what you recorded from your centralized server is very important, right? And also, like, you want to monitor, you probably want to monitor any abnormal mint on chain at all, right? Because there's another possibility where, as you said, that the hacker may find a way to get around, for example, to forge whatever contract call you use uh, to mint tokens on chain. And you can use Sentio, for example, to set alerts, say, okay, whenever there is a mint that is bigger than, because usually, when hackers do this kind of thing, they maybe will mint a large amount, and you can say, okay, whenever normally our servers only mint 10,000 coins per day, but today if you detect 20 20,000 mint coin of mint, then just alert the team immediately so we can take a look. So in that scenario, you can use system like Sentio to capture that loophole early and respond and react to that situation, before it went much worse.
Yeah, it's definitely a good use case, like tracking the abnormalities. Yeah, having all that data and setting up some automatic alerts, or maybe like some automatic stop gaps. So like maybe something pauses. If that's the case, that would definitely um, be super useful. And yeah, solutions that are needed, and we'll definitely slowly start to see getting adopted over time as more and more games and more, maybe more and more traditional applications. Like I can imagine, like if there's like an Uber Eats of sorts, there probably needs to be some centralized server that is coordinating drivers and restaurants, et cetera. And there needs to be some, I guess, intermediary there to maintain it for a little bit. But yeah, this is super interesting to talk about, and we're running on time, and would love to hear maybe some final thoughts from your end. what should people be thinking about, or yeah, maybe some final thoughts on Sentry, or some action items on how people can get involved and use your product.
Yeah, so I guess a shameless plugin that we are sort of having a public beta launch uh, in about a month or so, and also in general, we're just looking for Android users and basically people who are projects who are you know have a data-driven mind like Pontem, right, to work with us, and also like individuals who have a very analytical mind and are into building this dashboards and monitorings for projects. Please contact us and work with us. For example, for individual, a lot of these pretty awesome organizations like Metric Style, they have like a bounty program to build like pretty awesome dashboard for some other projects, for example. And if say if you use Centio and you win a bounty, we will be happy to match part of that bounty, to thank you for using Centio to solve a real world problem. And again, if you a data driven team as Pontem, you want to work with us, your Web3 project, you want to monitor and secure your and gain insights into your smart contracts, please talk to us as well.
Yeah, definitely recommend anyone out there in the audience looking at building a data product or need data for your product. It's probably like 99% of products. Definitely talk to the Sentio team. For us, they've been great. They've met a lot of our needs. You can see their product live on our stats page, and yeah, really excited. That's a really good idea of putting out bounties for some of these data viz. Definitely, if you have any ideas, reach out to us. We can help you build it, and yeah, maybe we'll love to do this again and maybe go through some of the public dashboards that you have so people can also see, and we could do some like kind of like live analysis. We live stream to YouTube, so we can show some of the charts there too. That would be awesome to do the next time we have you on.
Absolutely, sounds good.
Cool. Well, yeah, thank you for the time. Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you again next week. Thank you.
All right, thank you everyone. Bye bye.